Have you ever spent a few hours stacking a nice stack of firewood only to find out about a year later, one end of the firewood stack gave way, the whole thing shifted, or the whole thing just gave out? Well, there's probably a good reason as to why that happened. Now, probably like most of you watching this video, I've been cutting, splitting, and stacking firewood since I was probably about 6 years old. So in those 20 years experience working with firewood, I've learned a thing or two about what it takes to make a successful and stable stack of firewood. So we're going to go over those things in today's video, but I want to focus on 3 elements. First thing is the base. You want to have a nice firm base. Number 2 is a properly stacked end row. And number 3, especially when you're tarping your firewood, is having your firewood pitched properly. So first things first, let's go over the base. Alright, so component 1 of a strong, firm stack of firewood consists with a good base. Now, in an ideal world, you'd want to stack your firewood on a flat, level surface of gravel or concrete, something that's not going to shift. But let's face it, for 99% of us, that's probably not going to happen. You're probably going to be stacking it on dirt just like I am. So a couple tips that I have is try not to stack your firewood when there's frost going on in the ground, because as we all know, what happens when water freezes? It expands, so when that frost thaws, the ground is going to shift, it's going to contract a little bit, and there's a really good chance that your end row is going to shift. Also, you want to try not to stack your firewood on wet ground. You want it to be dry, firm, level. A couple tips that I have is you could take a rake, kind of rake out where you plan to stack your end rows, try and make that level, and then get a little tamper, just tamp down where the end rows are going to be, and that'll just help a little bit to prevent your end row from shifting, because if your end row shifts, then who knows what's going to happen the rest of your stack of firewood. It may give out that way, may shift this way, could just be a mess. So a proper, firm, flat, level base is ideal. Alright, so let's move on to component number 2, and this does take a lot of time to practice, the corner stack. Now when it comes to the corner stack, of course you want to have a firm, level base. And I like to save my good wood, my best wood for the corner stacks, and that's really important. What do I mean by my best wood or good wood? You want to look for pieces that are symmetrically square or rectangular. See how this is a pretty symmetrical square piece of wood? This is a great piece for doing my corner stack. You want to stay away from pieces like this for your corner stack. See how it's fatter on one side, thinner on the other side, and it twists a little bit? This is a big no-no for using this on your corner stack. This is good for the center of the stack. Additionally, when it comes to the center stack, you want to try and keep that level. So if you have a low spot on the center stack, you can take the fat end of a piece of wood like this, put it on the low side. That just helps to correct your center stack, keep that level. Now, when you're splitting wood, you'll notice that little wedges come off that wood, and you want to peel these off and save these. These are great for one of 2 things. You can use these for kindling to start your fire, or you can do what I do, which I really haven't seen anybody else use this technique. So when you're doing these corner stacks, you want to make sure that all the rock is out of these corner stacks. As you can see, there's a bit of rock in this stack right now, and of course you could take these pieces off, keep flipping them around, and eventually you'll find a piece that sits on here firmly and does not rock. However, you can also use little wedges like this you get from splitting your wood. I'm going to insert it right here because I knew the piece of wood on the corner stack was rocking right there. So if I insert this wedge right here and I try and rock this now, you could see I've taken about 99% of that rock out of this corner stack, and that's critical. If you start building this up from the bottom up and you get 4 foot up and you haven't corrected the rocking issue down here, well, I think you know what can happen. This thing could rock and your whole stack could literally fall over in a firm gust of wind, or if anybody knocks into it. So it's important that you have a really firm corner stack that does not rock. Now, another tip I have when it comes to building the corner stacks is typically you'll use 2 pieces of wood. But also in between those 2 pieces of wood, you want to use another piece in the center there to try and lock these 2 pieces in there. So I'll take a piece like that, insert it like so, and that just helps to lock everything in a bit better, and also you stack a little bit more wood in the stack. So when it comes to building this corner stack up, there's 2 things you want to focus on. Number 1 is you want to focus on keeping the sides plumb, meaning you want the sides going straight up and down. But as for the very end, as you bring this up, you actually want to build it in towards the center of your stack a little bit. I'll show you what I mean. And as you can see, if you compare the wood stack to this pole, it about matches the pole on the bottom, but as we go up, you can see that I start to build this stack inward. And there's a very good reason as to why I do that. Because I'm building this pile on dirt and I'm not building it on a concrete pad, no matter what I do, this is going to settle a little bit over time. Gravity is going to be wanting to push the wood stack down, ground's going to settle, and this end stack is actually going to bend out a little bit. If you look back at some of these other stacks here, you can see how they've actually pushed out a little bit. And when I built those stacks, it looked just like this. I built those stacks probably a year and a half ago now, something like that. So yeah, that's what you want to do. You want to build these end stacks inward and just allow for gravity to happen and allow for the wood pile to settle. Component 3 of a proper stack of wood is how you pitch the center mass of wood. As you can see, I have the center stack of wood high in the middle here, and it gets low on the sides. There's a reason for that. I don't have the money right now to buy a fancy schmancy woodshed, and we all know that in order for wood to burn hottest and most efficiently, it needs to be dry. So what I'm simply going to do is throw a tarp over the top of this. And by having this stack high in the center and low on the sides, when I put the tarp over the top of this wood, it's just going to help the water to drain off to either side. If you were to leave this flat, what's going to happen is water's going to collect in the center, the tarp's going to sag, it's just going to be a mess. Also, another thing that I've learned that helps is if you have some scrap 2x4s, 2x6s, 2x10s, if you put like one of these over the top of the stack, maybe like another one right here and another one right here stretching along the stack of firewood, and then throw your tarp over, pull that tarp tight, that just seems to help snow and rain kind of deflect and roll off the side of the tarp, so you don't have to worry about water pooling in the center of the tarp and, you know, coming down and making a mess over your stack of firewood. So 2 more quick tips I have is when it comes to how far apart should you stack your stacks of firewood, I would say, or I was always taught rather, that there should be enough room as to where a squirrel could sneak in there. That seems to be about the right gap. And secondly, if you look deep in this pile here, let me see if I get the focus going properly. You can see deep down in here, right here, there's a couple stringers. What I mean is that there are pieces of firewood that are stacked in between stacks of firewood, and the reason there's stringers in there is that just helps to strengthen everything, right? So that ties this pile into this pile, so if this one wants to shift, that puts some of the shift on this pile and vice versa, and it just helps to lock everything in there and prevent shifting.